Listen to this podcast now on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Why is the middle class shrinking? Why are people facing an affordability crisis while marginalized individuals called informals grow in numbers? Join me as I travel the world, speaking with people living in invisibility, the leaders working to solve it, and uncovering the hard truths shaping our economy and daily reality.
Download all of Red Apple Media's podcasts right now through your favorite podcast platform. The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Breaking news.
And I'm Jake Novak in for Roger Stone this evening on the Stone Zone. And we got some breaking news just in the last hour or so from Capitol Hill. It's not good news, in my opinion. The Senate failing to attach the Save America Act, so desperately needed in this country, failing to attach it to the budget reconciliation bills. Listen to this.
Both the yeas are 48, the nays are 50, 3/5 of the senators duly chosen and sworn not having voted in the affirmative. The motion is not agreed to. The point of order is sustained and the amendment fails.
So every Democrat voting against the SAVE Act, and 4 Republicans. Tom Tillis, the Republican who's now basically caucusing with the Democrats very often just to spite President Trump and his own voters. Linda Murkowski, the Republican from Arkansas who often votes against the interests of this country. Mitch McConnell, the Republican from Kentucky, who is also bitter and angry that he's not the power broker in the Republican Party and it's people who support President Trump. And Susan Collins of Maine. That right-wing fanatic that the Democrats are demonizing to justify their support for a Nazi and a communist and an abuser of women, we found out today, more specifically in a physical way, not just in a verbal way. That would be Graham Plattner. We'll talk a lot about him later in this program. But there you have it. And, it's amazing that this happens even as we are looking right now in real time at the desperate need for the SAVE Act, because here we are 2 days after Election Day in California, and we still have massive amounts of the vote left to count in this gubernatorial primary and in this mayoral primary in Los Angeles. As I'm speaking to you right now, only 66% of the vote has been counted in the mayoral primary. The positions in the primary are still the same. Karen Bass, the incumbent mayor, still ahead in first place. Spencer Pratt still in second. And he has a 6 percentage point lead over Nithya Raman. And you never know what's going to happen with that remaining 33% of the vote, do you? We've had vote dumps today of over 20,000 votes coming in with not one for Spencer Pratt, which is just not normal if they were being gathered normally. These are most obviously ballot harvested ballots, which shouldn't be allowed. I'll talk a little bit about mail-in ballots in just a second, the very nature of them. But just to specifically talk about what we're dealing with in California. I mean, it's very possible that Spencer Pratt will be pushed into third place and out of the general election in November by the shenanigans and that remaining amount of votes that they're counting. And who knows how they're ginning up these ballots. Who knows where they're coming from, and who knows how honest they are. In the gubernatorial primary, Steve Hilton still has the lead by about 1.3 percentage points over Xavier Becerra. But they've only counted 58% of the votes there. Well, after all, it's a whole city, it's a whole state. They got it. I mean, the whole thing is just so embarrassing. And the Democrats are responsible for this. This is classic wait to see what the overnight vote, the actual day of the election vote numbers are, and then decide how many of the harvested ballots you have in a warehouse somewhere you're going to unearth, how much you're going to risk. If it's, is it too much to overcome? Are you going to empty all the warehouses? What are you going to do? By the way, this method of winning elections was used very brilliantly by Lyndon B. Johnson when he first ran for the Senate in the primary in Texas there. In that time, the Democrats were really the only party there. He just needed to win the Democrat primary, which he did with ballots that came out from nowhere the next day after the election or days after the election, and not only were their ballots just enough for him to win, but they all came in alphabetical order. You can look it up. Read Robert Caro's great books about Lyndon B. Johnson. Folks, this is not acceptable in America. It has so many more connotations than just the fact that Democrats are winning. And horrible, horrible statespeople like Karen Bass and Xavier Becerra are likely to win elections because of this, or at least get a chance to win elections because of this. That's the immediate problem. The long-term problem is we are now breeding generation after generation of Americans, and rightfully so, who don't trust the process. And when you have a society that doesn't trust the voting process, you got a big problem on your hands. You have a huge problem on your hands. Now, I want to say something about mail-in ballots because this is the crux of the problem here. We're talking about mail-in ballots. I know that there have been a lot of conspiracy theories and questions about some of these voting machines and the voting tabulation, and I can understand the problems with that and the fears over that. I get it. But those are hard to prove, as is trying to prove that they've just brought up a bunch of people out of nowhere, although that's getting easier to prove, even with mail-in ballots. But here's the problem with mail-in ballots and why we shouldn't even be having this debate about fraud. Because whether they're fraudulent or not, please say it with me. And for those of you who are social media warriors who go on Facebook or X or any one of the other platforms, Truth Social, whatever, and get into arguments with people, maybe you travel over to Blue Sky, I want you to remember this argument. Because when you know more of your history and you also think logically, you're going to win more debates, or at least you'll realize that you're not debating someone who's not worth debating. So I want you to all say this with me if you don't already know it, and just listen to it if you don't already know it. Mail-in ballots are not secret ballots. I'll say it again. Mail-in ballots are not secret ballots. Even if the person filling out that mail-in ballot is the person who's supposed to be filling it out. I don't know whether he or she is doing that alone. I don't know if I'm dealing with the wife who's being domestically abused and pressured by the husband or the boyfriend to fill in a ballot in a certain way. I don't know if somebody else is filling it out for them. I don't know who's seeing it when they put it in the mail, and maybe somebody looks at it and says, "Oh, I know that woman. That's my mom, or that's my cousin, and they've always voted for one party. I'm throwing this in the garbage." Secret ballots are necessary for an election to be legitimate. And we have a history of a problem with this in this country. After Reconstruction was over in the South, and they were having more open elections in the South, and the Democrats were allowed to run again, the elections used to be held very publicly, and there was a box for you to drop your Democrat ballot in, and a box for you to drop your Republican ballot in. And they often voted at your place of work. And if you put your ballot in the Republican box, you probably lost your job or got your head beat in. That's just one example of why if you don't have a secret ballot, it's not legitimate. Because it's not. Secret ballots are necessary for elections to be legitimate, for us to know that the person at least has some confidence that their vote is not going to be, they're not going to face retribution for their vote. That they can keep some professional and personal privacy involved. I don't like mail-in ballots, period. I don't think we should have absentee voting in America for anyone other than our soldiers stationed overseas, maybe some of our diplomats stationed overseas, and for that relatively small number of people, because it's not that much when you think about it, especially when you spread it out state by state, they can vote on a secure laptop at their facility, at their embassy, at the consulate, or at their base. And if they're literally in a forward position in a battlefield right now, then voting isn't really their top priority. Staying alive is their top priority, and we'll worry about that later. Mail-in ballots are not secret ballots. They are not legitimate. No legitimate society should be using mail-in ballots in any numbers at all, period. So don't go online and don't argue with your lefty friends or non-friends on Facebook or X or anywhere else and talk about how mail-in ballots are fraud and the Democrats are ballot harvesting. You know, they've heard those arguments before, and all they have to do is say, well, there's no proof. No, I'm going to give you a gift. I don't need to have a court case or evidence of actual people doing X, Y, or Z to prove the absolutely objective truth that mail-in ballots are not secret ballots and they should not be used. What's going on in California right now, a huge percentage of votes are not secret ballots. In the 2020 presidential election, a huge percentage of the votes were not secret ballots. These are not legitimate in any decent, understanding society. And it's got nothing to do with how advanced that society is technologically. I'm hearing a lot of people saying like, well, what are we, like some third world banana republic? We can't count ballots in a few hours. That's not the argument. The argument is no matter how small or technologically advanced or not your country is, you shouldn't be using mail-in ballots because they are not secret ballots. And if the Republicans have any brains, they will take my advice and film a commercial with the guy in a wife-beater T-shirt standing over a woman in a cold water flat, a poor neighborhood, standing over her and forcing her to fill in a ballot the way he wants to, with his backhand about to slap her across the face. That will get the message across. And then do a time machine. Let's go back to 1882 and the local election in Tennessee, and somebody wants to vote for the Republican, and his boss is looking over him as he puts his ballot into the Republican box, and the next thing he knows, he's out of a job. Mail-in ballots are not secret ballots. Period. All right, there's a lot more to get to here on the Stone Zone. I'm Jake Novak in for Roger Stone. We're going to talk Graham Plattner. We're going to talk this John Bolton thing. And I'd like to get to your calls by the end of the hour. 800-848-9222. I'm trying to get to a couple of them. I'm Jake Novak again. Roger Stone out this evening. Very grateful for this opportunity. We're going to be right back.
One summer moment can change a child's life. Through Toys for Tots Give and Go initiative, your support provides books, games, toys, and outdoor adventures that spark curiosity, creativity, and a love of nature. Whether it's fishing, learning a new sport, reading under a tree, or playing with friends, these moments build confidence and lifelong memories. For too many children, those moments never come. You can help change that this summer. Visit toysfortots.org. Toys for Tots, delivering hope beyond the holidays. The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Breaking news.
And I'm Jake Novak in for Roger Stone. I have even more breaking news for you. And this is really breaking news, especially if you're someone who follows the financial newspapers and websites for your news, because they haven't reported it yet, even though it happened a few hours ago. A Boeing Dreamliner, a new one, had only been in service for about 6 months. The front end of a Boeing Dreamliner on the tarmac in Frankfurt collapsed, fell to the ground, injuring the crew members. Thankfully, there were no people aboard, no passengers. There were people. There were crew members. Crew members are people. Don't get on me. Please don't tweet me on that. Several crew members were injured. Thankfully, no passengers were on board. But another developing story coming out of this, and I'm sorry, this is from my more than 30 years in journalism and TV and radio journalism. I have to say this. It's not being reported in the financial newspapers. It's not on the Wall Street Journal website. It's not on the CNBC website. And boy, the CNBC website, if you have that app, they break in over every little thing that's got nothing to do with financial news, or at least not directly. The latest redistricting thing, they're constantly breaking in on that. They break in, they put a big red banner on things. Boeing is a Dow component, meaning a significant move in Boeing one way or the other can move the entire market, okay? But it's not on CNBC. It's not on Wall Street Journal. This is a huge, huge company for America and a huge company for investors. And so that's my only explanation for why Boeing shares right now in aftermarket trading are only down 17 cents a share, 0.08%. To me, that makes no sense. Sometimes when there's a technical problem on a plane, a door blows open, or it turns out it's not the fault of the company. Somebody opened it, some moron mechanic made a mistake, that kind of thing. There are not a lot of moron mechanics, thank God. A passenger does something crazy. This one, I don't see how this isn't Boeing's problem. I don't see how the front end of a relatively new Dreamliner collapses off the rest of the plane to the tarmac, injuring people. I don't see how this isn't a structural issue with Boeing. And by the way, there are a lot of people who have been whistleblowing at Boeing for years now about some of the people working there not being properly hired. That could be a topic of an entirely different show. But I don't know, if you're a day trader, a stock trader right now, you might want to put a put option or short Boeing stock right now, because when this story actually does get reported in the Journal and the CNBC websites overnight, when they finally do it, bad job. And I used to work at CNBC. I look at stuff that's on that app every single day, and I'm like, what is this doing here? It's like MS Now type content, which I think that they are using because they're part of the same company now. Comcast NBC spun them off. I mean, this is a Dow component that has had a major, major problem. And there's not one thing about it on the CNBC app and not one thing about it on the Wall Street Journal yet. What are they doing? What are they doing over there? This isn't partisan. I'm not making a partisan comment here. I'm talking about business. You're bad at this if you don't get it. I want to talk about Graham Plattner because this is also a breaking story. Just in the last few hours, the New York Times coming out with more accusations about Graham Plattner. Also, bad job by the New York Times in the way that they did this story. Actually, one of his ex-girlfriends is accusing him of physical assault. But they bury it deep in the article, and then in the headlines and the subheadlines, they refer to it as, disturbing behavior. No, it's sexual assault. And if you darn believe it was a Republican or somebody other than a Senate candidate for the Democrats, they would have used that terminology. So naturally, some real journalists are asking members of Congress, Democrats, if they still support this guy. Now, if you follow me on social media, and I urge you to do so, on X is my most active account, at JakeNY, two Jakes, at JakeNY, you'll know that for a few days I've been telling you that the DNC has given out the talking points to anyone who's asked, any Democrat member of Congress who's asked on the street about Graham Plattner or in the halls of Congress, they should say they're not following the story, which is a total BS lie, and it's an embarrassing one at that. No one believes that you haven't. It's a huge story. You're telling me you haven't followed it? Give me a break. But AOC just tried that line a couple of hours ago. Here she is being asked about the latest accusations.
Should Democrats abandon Graham Plattner after these messages came out, these sexually explicit messages they sent to women?
I haven't waded into that primary. I don't believe the primary has occurred yet. So I will kind of, again, I don't wade in on that. I haven't waded in that.
I don't know. Hey, she's not alone. I'll play you some more sound from that. And when we come back, I'm not only going to play you some more duplicitous, disingenuous members of Congress following that same baloney line, but I'm going to ask you a question. All of you listening right now, are you ready to rightfully make Graham Plattner the millstone around the Democrats' neck that it belongs to be, that it should be? Do you have the energy for it? Because you might think you do. But remember, the Democrats have set the bar very high for hysterical reactions to things. This isn't hysterical. You should be ready. We'll be right back.
The Stone Zone. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And I'm Jake Novak in for Roger Stone this evening on the Stone Zone. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. We ask an incorrect question in America. How many times have you been at a cocktail party, sat in a classroom, spoken with your friends, and the phrase, something along the lines of, why can't we get better people to run for office in America? How often does that spring up? For me, very often. I'm sure for a lot of you that is a familiar phrase you've heard. And, we're asking the wrong thing. If you really understand our political culture in this country, the question we should be asking is there anything about our political culture that isn't a magnet, that isn't attracting horrible people? Our latest exhibit is this Graham Plattner of Maine. A rich kid, silver spoon kid growing up his whole life. Now with a phony job, they call him an oyster farmer. Turns out his only customer is his mother. Yes, he joined the Marines and fought. I assume he had a decent record in the military. But someone who has not just a Nazi tattoo, but a Totenkopf SS tattoo. That was the division of the SS that ran the death camps. Also the division of the SS that lined up my relatives and shot them in Lithuania. Lithuanian and Russian Jews and Ukrainian Jews didn't get the chance to survive Auschwitz. They were just lined up and shot. June of 1941. And we know that he lied about the meaning of the tattoo. He boasted about it in the past, etc., etc. And yet, with all those factors already out there for several weeks about him, and really months, top Democrats, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Chuck Schumer, openly endorsing him. And now today, just in the last couple of hours, a story in the New York Times doing a bad journalistic job of not hyping up their own work with several of the women who had dated and had been associated with Graham Plattner talking about assault. No, not battery. No one is saying that he punched them in the head or raped them, but assault, physically stopping them from getting out of a room, touching them in other ways, and also acting in committing verbal harassment. And yet, as you just heard from AOC, you have a bunch of Democrats who are going to play I haven't heard anything about, I haven't really looked at this. Well, that's bad enough because that's just a blatant lie. But then you got people like Chris Coons, Democrat senator, who is deciding not to play dumb. He's just playing morally bankrupt. Listen to this.
And, frankly, Mr. Plattner is a four-tour combat veteran and someone whose conduct as he came home from war, many have questioned. I don't know him and don't know him at all well, but I'm going to give him a measure of grace and wait until I get a chance to hear more about the details of all these different allegations. In my view, the folks who we have here in the Senate and who we might have here in the Senate, we should hold a high standards.
Oh, you're going to give him a measure of grace. That's nice. Here's Elizabeth Warren. She was asked about it just now. Here's what she had to say.
Aren't you worried about more coming out about his past that could damage his chances?
What I'm worried about is another day of war in Iran.
Are these accusations disturbing to you?
What is disturbing to me is what's happening in this economy and how right now the Republicans just sign off on it.
Why don't people laugh? Why don't members of the press corps laugh when they're doing these impromptu news conferences and people act like this? This is laughable. She should be laughed at when she clearly dodges a question like this. Here's her fellow senator from Massachusetts, Ed Markey. Listen to this.
Before we go, Senator, I have to ask you about embattled Maine Senate candidate Graham Plattner. He met with Democrats in D.C. yesterday. Will you endorse his campaign?
I know that he is out and he is campaigning on kitchen table issues. I know that he is opposed to this slush fund, which Donald Trump is putting together. He's putting affordability front and center for the voters of Maine to decide this race. And I think that he has the right issues to be focusing upon this year.
I mean, he just goes on and on like this. Doesn't answer the question. And he does get a follow-up, but not much of a follow-up after that. Here's Ro Khanna, the great Ro Khanna, who read out names from the Epstein files on the floor of the House. And it turned out 4 of the people he named were not involved at all. They were actually people who showed up in a police lineup just so that people could identify the real suspects. The great moral paragon. Behold our moral betters. Here's Ro Khanna responding to this.
And I know, this photo that everyone's seeing, which is everywhere, of him in the towel, as I understand it, that's from the Kick social media website, which is mostly teenagers that are on that. Did you ask him about that issue, why he's posting those pictures on a social media platform that is mostly teens and young people?
I did ask if there are any credible allegations of assault, of domestic violence, of rape, of having any inappropriate relationship with a minor, and I made it clear that for me is a red line, and he said no, there is not. Now, obviously, he had texts that were allegedly consensual, and while he was married, and that's a matter for him and his wife came out and said that she forgave him, and so that.
So the guy who read off the innocent names of people that happened to be in the Epstein files, even though they were innocent, has no problem with all this. And no problem with the Totenkopf tattoo. All that stuff was out there before. Now, not to be outdone, you don't have to just look at members of Congress. What do the ladies of The View have to say about this? They're supposed to be the great defenders of women and women's safety. and against toxic masculinity. Here they are talking about how, well, here's what they say.
They don't have to run this guy. If Graham Plattner drops out by July 13th, they can replace him with another candidate. I would like to posit a name, Jared Golden. He was a two-term House member in Maine. He was a conservative, blue-collar guy, military veteran, somebody who was widely popular in the state. He won in a Republican-leaning district. This is somebody they could put on the ballot who also, by the way, worked for Susan Collins, but then decided that he skewed more left. That's somebody with character and with...
You just said they'd have to.
Now, interrupting right now is Kara Swisher. She is a tech reporter, used to be a respected tech reporter. She has a very, very severe case of Trump derangement syndrome, so much so that she goes public on interview shows to talk about how she berates her elderly mother over it. What a lovely person she must be. This is her as a guest on The View interrupting that very, very logical alternative that was just placed in front of the crew there on The View. Let's go with somebody else. But Kara Swisher, this is what she has to say.
It would be the party, and I don't love...
But are they in charge? No, it's the same thing.
Well, Democrats do tend to decide who their nominees are.
But they shouldn't. Like, here's the thing. When Mamdani won, a lot of people were like, young people should vote, young people should vote. And then Mamdani wins, and they go, well, they shouldn't vote like that. Like, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
I am just so deeply uncomfortable with the fact...
Oh, so the people voted for him. That's why we should... I mean, honestly, first of all, no one's voted for him yet, by the way. That primary hasn't happened. Now, he's running basically unopposed because Janet Mills, the governor of Maine, who was running against him in the Democrat Party, suspended her campaign, and now there's, of course, a chance that she'll bring it back. She'll come back online. We'll see what happens. But, by the way, no one's voted for him yet. This is all the polls. This is all opinion polls, which, by the way, in the last 24 hours have swung very rapidly towards Susan Collins in this race. He had a 9-point lead just a couple of days ago in the last poll before that. Now we saw something where he's within the margin of error. He's only have the margin of error. So there's that going for the people who want to get rid of this guy. But I have a challenge for you, and I want you to call me on this if you're ready for it. 800-848-9222. Graham Plattner should be the millstone around every Democrat, just like the Democrats tried to make the very fine people hoax against Donald Trump, the millstone around him and anyone who voted for him. As you know, that was a hoax. He said very clearly that he was not talking about the neo-Nazis and the Klansmen, and yet they cut that out of every clip that they put on all the major news programs, including 60 Minutes and everyone else. They all lied. They all lied. But this is real. This is a guy who's proud of his SS tattoo. This is a guy who is proud, was proud, and seems to still be proud, but he's pretending he's not, of blaming women who are rape victims for their own rapes. This is a guy with really, really disturbing behavior. Goes on a website known for older men trolling underage girls and posts sexy pictures of himself. If you are you ready to really do this? Listeners, if you're Republicans or Trump supporters or just supporters of decency in America, are you ready to confront every Democrat other than John Fetterman and the few other Democrats who've said, I'm not supporting this guy? Are you ready to say for the rest of their lives in politics, but why did you support Graham Plattner, or why didn't you stand up against him? I'd love to hear about your plan for health care, but I don't know if I can vote for you because you're a Plattner person. We need to very fine people hoax every one of these Democrats, not just the ones who I just played for you on the tape. Are you ready, America? Tell me if you are, 800-848-9222, because I don't know if you are. Because most Republicans I know don't drop everything to go protest every 5 seconds. You know why? Because we work for a living or we have families. We can't be professional protesters like they are at Delaney Hall and getting paid whatever amount of money and getting supplies. We can't just drop everything when we're trying to make our lives and ends meet and pay our bills during COVID lockdowns and do George Floyd riots when everyone else was told you can't go out in public because you'll get the disease. But this is an easy one, folks. You don't have to do that. You don't have to drop work and go to Graham Plattner's house on his oyster farm paid for by his mommy. You don't have to take the day off. But if you're on social media, if you talk to friends, you can say, listen, I was thinking about voting for maybe some Democrats, but I can't vote for a party that would nominate this guy. I can't vote for a party where almost every major leader, including the senior leader of their party, The Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer, is endorsing a guy like this. Can't do it. Sorry. Just like they said to you over the Very Fine People hoax, which was a lie, over the drink bleach, which was a lie. This is real. You can feel real good about standing up on this one. This is I posted this on again, I urge you to follow my X account because this is where a lot of these quick little tools you can use and put in your own toolbox. I feel free to use them. You don't even need to quote me. But as I posted on my X account at JakeNY earlier tonight, this is the easiest litmus test in the history of politics that I've ever seen. All you got to do is not endorse Graham Plattner. All you got to do is say, pretend you're a Democrat in Congress or a Democrat leader. I want to win the Congress back. I want to have the Democrats be, but I can't support this guy. We're going to get someone else. How hard is that to do? It's so easy. It'll boost your poll numbers. You'll get donations from real people and not foreign enemies of the United States, like Neville Singham and George Soros, if you do this. And they won't do it. They won't do it. This isn't like a situation where, oh my goodness, let's say you were a Republican all those years ago and you believe the Very Fine People hoax. Let's say you believed it. And then you're in a quandary. Are you going to speak up against your sitting Republican president, Donald Trump? That's a tough one, right? This guy hasn't even won a primary yet. No one's actually voted for him yet. There is nothing to lose if you are a Democrat voter or elected leader. Nothing to lose by denouncing this guy. You have everything to gain and nothing to lose, and yet they still can't do it. Why? And the answer is the same answer I give to everything that the Democrats do, which is incredibly head-scratching over the last 10 years. The supporting of boys and girls' locker rooms. The supporting of open borders. The supporting of emptying our prisons. There's only one logical reason for this, and that is they are being funded by the enemies of this country. Our campaign finance laws, which were easy to get around for so many years, have finally been completely eliminated, basically, in de facto eliminated. Via ActBlue, via the internet, via Bitcoin, whatever it is now easy for our enemies to finance our elections. And they are. And that is why you have so many Democrats and probably a few Republicans who are taking anti-American, anti-civil society positions that will get them no real votes among real people. And that's what we're dealing with right now. But I ask you, are you ready? I know you're busy. I know that especially conservative Republicans, you have families. You have jobs. But are you ready to make this Graham Plattner issue, as I've laid it out to you, completely factual and completely objectively? Are you ready to make this the issue of our time right now? The Democratic leadership, in what would be the easiest thing in the world to do, is not abandoning him yet. They might tomorrow, but only after way too late to do so. And it would be too late. Even if they abandon him tomorrow, don't let them get away with this. This is a real Very Fine People hoax. This is real. And the Democrats aren't passing this easy test. It's as simple as that. Again, if you're ready to do this or not, let me know. 800-848-9222. We're going to come back. I want to talk about a little bit more about this and also the news today. The real story that I think is really the story connected to this John Bolton plea deal. It's not exactly what you think. In some ways, there's a lot of good that could come out of this plea deal, and I'd like to talk about that as well. We'll be right back here on the Stone Zone. I'm Jake Novak in for Roger Stone. Thanks for joining us.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And I'm Jake Novak filling in for Roger Stone this evening. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Another big story today is that John Bolton is going to plead guilty to the mishandling of classified documents. We've heard so many cases like this. We know the one I think was mostly bogus, presented against President Trump. He had them in a secure place, in safes, in a difficult place to break into, to say the least, Mar-a-Lago, and yet the Biden Justice Department raided his home, threw all the documents on the floor to make it look like that's how they were being stored, went through Melania's underwear drawer. You know the story. We know the story of Joe Biden having classified documents literally just in his garage there. No real protection there. Although I'm sure it's not that easy to break into his home either, but still. the issue with the John Bolton thing is first the hypocrisy. Here's John Bolton speaking out after the Mar-a-Lago raid, or speaking about the Mar-a-Lago raid.
And so I think a lot of these documents he may have just thought were cool. A lot of them he thought might be souvenirs. A lot of them he thought might be useful to him later. I can't answer the question until I see the document. But, well, there are a lot of theories that he could use it as information against his enemies, that he could give it to people in exchange for favors. We don't know. And frankly, I don't think speculating about the reasons is all that helpful.
All right. So he's a hypocrite. Here's the headline. Politics is all about hypocrisy. It's an essential ingredient of politics. So that's not the big deal here for me. The big deal here for me is that this is politics as usual, or culture as usual in D.C. This is the political class believing that things that don't belong to them do belong to them. These classified documents belong to the people of the United States of America, not to you, members of Congress or members of a cabinet, former cabinet member or former president or former vice president. They don't belong to you. They don't belong to you, to even your own papers that you write while you're sitting at the desk and doing your official work. You don't get to, after you retire from government or when you leave government, donate them, quote unquote, donate to the National Archives. And there have been people who've done this, and then write it off your taxes based on your inflated value that you give your papers. I mean, how egregious is that? The political class is very much the modern day embodiment of King George III and the other plutocrats and aristocrats who used us like pawns. And that's what led to the beginning of this country. You know, we've got Freedom 250 going on here in this country right now, poorly recognized and acknowledged, I think, right now so far. We're almost halfway through the year, and we have not seen enough recognition of our 250th birthday. Nothing like what I remember in 1976 during the bicentennial year. And I'm working on that. On many of the stations you're listening to this program right now, I will be hosting a number of 1 minute and 30-second Freedom 250 moments called The Decisions That Made America. And I hope you'll listen to those and enjoy those. It isn't just going to be dates in history. That's easy. I'm going to be doing analysis of the major decisions that happened on particular dates and why they were important. But this John Bolton thing hopefully will end this culture as usual in the political class. Stop taking things that don't belong to you so you can write your book and make money off of what was supposed to be public service. I can't stand it when they call these people public servants. They're nothing of the sort. I'm Jake Novak. Speak to you soon.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Sacco and Felix, New York and New Jersey's premier attorneys at law. Their team brings decades of experience across a wide range of practice areas. Whatever life brings, they're your legal team. From everyday matters to complex cases, they've got you covered with the experience you need and the results you want. Because when life gets complicated, they make it simple. SaccoFilas.com. SACCOFILLAS.com. 2 C's, 2 L's.